All right, welcome to the RatCast, your one of your favorite ESO PvP podcasts, and I
It's their
think
favorite.
it's a. Is it? Yeah. Well, see, the things I don't like to say it's the favorite because then we're kind of establishing something like, okay, listen, we're competing with the other PvP
That's fair.
podcasts,
That's
but
fair.
I mean, the only one I can think of is like the other one that I do with Grim, which is like the Three Skeevers one, but nobody else does like a PvP podcast. There's regular ESO type podcasts, but those are all like kind of PVE or like lore related type of
Mm.
thing. So, but this is your one of your favorite. I feel a little bit better saying one of your favorite, right? So one of your favorite PvP podcasts. And before we start, of course I'm Icy with Icyfire Gaming. Today we have Candle. How you doing, Candle?
Hey.
And we have Camera. How you doing, Camera?
Hello.
And so today, well, I'm jumping ahead again. Just two quick announcements. The first is we do have the audio version available now on Anchor. I have episodes 1 and 2 already there, so if you want to just get the audio version of that, you can check it out. And all of the episodes going forward will have an audio version, so feel free to check it out if you don't want to see the random back row footage of battlegrounds and Cyrodiil type PvP content. That's cool too. And the second announcement is next week on episode 4, we're going to be doing some healer theory with Candle and Shoddy. And one of our topics is going to be why the Templar class is the worst healer in ESO. So
Oh,
be sure to tune in for that because that's going to be a banger most
that
likely.
title alone will earn you clicks.
Oh yeah, no. When Shoddy was telling me, I was like, "What? Okay, but I'll hear him out. I'll hear him out. So we'll see what Shoddy has to say about that." And those are the announcements. So let's get into today's topic, Oakensoul. We've just been, I think we have like almost exactly a week now with Oakensoul. For those of us that do have it, Candle, did you manage to get the Mythic?
I'm not getting it yet. I haven't gotten any of the new stuff. I haven't bought the DLC myself. I'm waiting for people to get into it. I'm waiting to feel the receiving end of it, which I have. I've run across a few Night Blades who are running it. I wanted to see what things were like first, and honestly, I don't want to use it. I want to use double bar builds, so I want those double bar builds to still be relevant. And if I don't have to, I probably will get it. I'm going to get the DLC eventually. It's just that I want to be a little bit patient. I want to see what happens first, and then I'll get into it, especially because of the hype and the push of all the leads coming out and this fucking craziness of having to go and get these leads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely my rule of thumb whenever the mythics have always come out is to, I like to always quote Magneto from, I think it was X2, back in like almost 20 years ago now. There's a scene where all of his minions are running in and he says, let the pawns rush in. That's kind of how I treat the mythics when they first come out. So my rule of thumb was always to wait like a month or two. So
Yeah.
when one good example is the harpooner's kilt or whatever over in the
Right.
Shadowfen alchemy plants, whatever. I did not touch that thing for one bit, and I remember seeing like so many people just scavenging those nodes like it was insert something relatable here, and I was just like, no thanks, I don't want any part of that. And of course, naturally, just playing the game, I stumbled upon the lead without even trying, just doing my endeavors, and I got it like a month and a half later. Zero
Nice.
effort, zero effort, and I still don't even have the mythic because I'm still missing a couple of the other leads. But again, I'm not a PvEer, so
See, I'm usually like that with mythics and like just kind of wait and either get them semi-naturally or wait a little bit, kind of feel it out and then, go for them. Mostly just because I don't really like grinding for things too bad.
mhm.
However, I really wanted to make the build that I'm running with Oakensoul just kind of a meme Blast Bones ulti build. So for those who don't know, the animate Blast Bones ult that the Necro has summons 3 Blast Bones at once, and it's really fun to use. And I knew Oakensoul would be good for it because it's a really straightforward build. You're just trying to pump damage into that one skill. So I got it.
And you get
And
lots of ulti-gen too, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
really
you get
important.
well, you actually get worse ulti-gen with Oakensoul than you would without Oakensoul on a Necro,
Oh,
because
interesting.
you don't have space to run corpse consumption abilities. You can't run something
Right.
like Potency, which Potency is already as much as Major Heroism. So you throw on top of, you know, the corpse consumption passive and other corpses you're going to be finding on the ground. Like you get a ton of ult gen from that.
But what
However,
makes it worth it?
the crit damage makes it worth it.
Yeah.
And we'll kind of get into the only other build I think I would probably run with this is a Nightblade ganker of some sort. We'll kind of get into that. Um, but the crit damage, that major force on Oakensoul is a killer.
I think that's what we've seen with the Oakensoul across the board. Maybe DK is the exception, but maybe it's not the exception. I think that the crit is like all the Oakensoul builds, I think, are all going for crit.
Yeah, I mean that major force is totally why. Like 20% is a lot of damage. If you have a lot of crit damage already and you have a high crit chance, that major force 20% means you're probably going to be hitting crits more often than not, and you're going to be hitting crit cap on most people, at least in CP PvP.
Hmm.
So on that subject, also, I'd be interested to find out and talk about and look at impen and how much impen is going
So
to be.
the amount that you get from Rally Cry is worth about 25% crit damage, which means with Major Force, Rally Cry is already pretty much useless. It is useless in a group setting. Um,
Yeah.
so do with that what you will, right? So I'm sitting at about 150% crit damage, I think, in my non-Oakensoul, or sorry, in my no CP build, which is a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be hitting crit cap on most people in BGs. And in my CP build, I'm like pushing 190% crit damage, which is a lot.
So when you say rally cry is about 25%, are you also including the 1320 like your base? So you're putting that together for like 3,000 crit resistance?
Sorry, say that again?
Are you also including the base 1320 crit resistance as well in that calculation for 25%, or just strictly talking rally
No,
cry?
just strictly talking rally cry.
Okay.
Okay, so when we include the base crit resist, now we're getting somewhere. So at least we're mitigating some of that crit damage.
Yes.
Yeah, because I guess the average would be kind of close to 3,000. I'm assuming
So
most people
in
are.
CP,
Yep.
people will still be hitting crit cap on you, especially Nightblades
Mm-hmm.
in an Oaken Soul build. Um, in no CP, then you're gonna kind of start to actually be mitigating that damage.
Mm-hmm.
It's still gonna be a lot though.
You think there should be, or you think there might be use for running transmutation back as like an additional thing alongside rally cry?
I think so, yeah. Transmute and Rally Cry would probably mean most people are getting, well, pretty much everyone, I think. I don't know if you could get enough crit damage to surpass that.
Mm-hmm.
In a group, if you're in a group, transmutation, okay, yeah. If you're in a group and somebody's using it for the rest of the group, but if I was on my own or if I'm in a
Right.
team
I wouldn't
yam,
run both of those, but yeah, in a group is kind of what I was referring to. Like, if
yeah,
you're in a group, have someone running Rally Cry, have someone running Trans.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And then it is going to have a lot of value.
Yeah, because I was
Yes.
thinking with our particular group, because I know Shadi likes to run the triple buff, and then somebody's running rallying cry, and then that kind of leaves me as like the second or third support, whatever. Then I'm like, instead of running my little Jorville setup for the rapids, I could just throw on transmutation as something additional.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely going to be useful to have in your group going forward. If, of course, they don't change Oakensoul or Major Force itself. I don't think they would do that necessarily. And I don't think they're changing Oakensoul anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
What kind of
but I
open soul
also,
builds do we see?
so I've been seeing a lot of mag DKs. Well, I guess DKs
Yeah.
in BGs. Uh, using corrosive armor and just smacking you with whips really, really hard, of course. Um,
Night blades?
Magdens, And Nightblades, yeah. Magdans and Nightblades are the other ones that I've been seeing because Magdans can really take advantage of crit damage with their passives, and then obviously Nightblades can. So
Nightblades in Battlegrounds?
yeah, yeah. Even in Battlegrounds, I've been seeing a lot of Nightblades,
I've been
assuming
seeing,
them, that they're running Oakensoul.
yeah, I've been seeing them in open world, and I can tell you, I'm I'm always curious to get ganked by Nightblades because if they can one-shot me in open world, then I look at my build and I say, okay, I need to make a couple adjustments here and see if they can still one-shot me. So I'm always curious and I'm always willing to let the Nightblades find me and see if they can gank me and one-shot me. And last patch, I was playing a particular build that was not one-shottable, and now this patch, I have been getting one shot. I've made some adjustments, no longer getting one shot, but it's shocking how much damage some of these Nightblades are capable of putting out with the Oakensoul setup.
Yeah, yeah. One of the first things I said, I think I even said it on the last podcast, was you'll be seeing, 40K plus ganks. And the first time I hopped into our Discord, I think, one of our friends was talking about getting ganked, and I was like, "Oh, how much was it?" And he was like, "It was like a 45K gank," and I was like, "I knew it."
And this is from a Nightblade?
Yes.
Jesus, because I've only seen high numbers like that when people are running that crazy invisible heavy attack DK with Inferno staff, right? Like that. Those
Those are
gimmick
making the
builds.
rounds too again, I think, with
Oh,
Oakensoul,
okay.
unfortunately.
Hmm.
But that I think is more so a problem with corrosive armor.
Hmm.
Which I mean, we can go on a slight tangent. Let's be real, corrosive armor's pretty strong, both offensive and defensively, and
Yes.
that's especially potent when combined. So
Hmm. So if you were gonna make a change to corrosive, right? I guess you could make magma, keep that like the defensive diversion, the defensive
so
version
yeah,
of it
you could
as it
always
is.
split them.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
like doing that occasionally. I don't think splitting them is inherently necessary. Obviously keep Magma as the more defensive one. Maybe just reduce the healing, or not the healing, the health, or increasing, I guess, the health limit on it so that you take a little bit more damage.
Hmm.
Like
Um,
10% per hit instead of
yeah, like max
5%.
of 10% per hit, maybe. Because that would still keep you feeling pretty tanky, especially if you have some cross heals going, but not like nearly impossible to kill.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe take like half a percent of corrosive and then throw that onto magma as like an alternative.
You
Maybe.
could do that, maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Because, most people, I would imagine, they pick corrosive for the offensive capability, and it
Right.
just naturally has a defensive kit that comes with it. So you're getting the best of
Yeah.
both worlds without even putting much effort into it.
It's very
Yeah.
rare that you see magma in PvP.
Yeah. And so obviously that can, combined with the crit from Oakensoul is crazy amounts of damage. Because the one thing that you tend to lack on Oakensoul builds, especially if you're going for crit, is pen. Um, so corrosive armor kind of makes up for that perfectly. And then obviously DK passives and the heroism from the ring mean they're getting corrosive a lot.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think that is something else they could tone down. I think corrosive armor you can gain, and it could be the only nerf that they would need. You can gain ultimate while in corrosive, correct?
Yes. There's
See,
Oh.
that's a
only
little odd because well, I get that it's not a transformation ultimate, right? But it's very akin to like the clown forms, in that like
Yep.
you're basically invincible, or at least if you're smart, you can basically be invincible for that amount of time, right?
I think it's
Hmm.
just the Vamp form and the Colossus form where you're not gaining
And
alt
werewolf as well.
and Werewolf.
And
So,
that
yeah.
kind of makes sense in terms of like a transformative
Right.
perspective, right?
But I
Because
think
you're.
just from a balance standpoint, I think corrosive could use that nerf as well. Or just even, like I said, even if that was the only nerf, maybe see where that goes. Tweak things little by little. Don't just hit them with a big hammer.
What about we increase the all cost?
Um,
Maybe from
you
200 to
could do that, I guess.
225, 250?
250 more than 225. I don't think 225 would really matter, especially when there's a set now that gives you 20 ult every 2 seconds.
Oh, geez.
That probably would be the best choice, is to increase the cost, because you don't want to completely destroy what
Right, you don't want to
DK
gut it.
is.
Mm-hmm.
And ult generation is an
And I'll be
important
real,
part of
I don't
DK.
play DK, so I don't really know. I'm not the one to ask exactly how it needs to be tweaked. Just from what I see in PvP,
Yeah.
which is a lot of PvP, I just noticed that corrosive armor kind of overperforms.
Yeah.
And I think most PvPers would agree with me there.
Yeah, and DKs I think would have to agree. Like if you've played different builds, I've ran corrosive DKs, and if you really start to pump yourself into your ult generation and get a few different sources of ult generation going, and you use corrosive, it's really impressive what it does. And it's very versatile, because it does save your life when you use it. If you put it on your back bar, and your back bar is your defensive bar, and you're struggling, you're in a bad spot, all of a sudden, all you need is your corrosive. It gives you a huge heal, gives you all your resources back, and now protects you for the next 12 seconds, I think it is. And you're good to go. And then all of a sudden, you also can kill somebody too, because it's a crazy strong offensive ability. So it's kind of the perfect sort of real scenario PvP ult, because it protects you in a bad spot and allows you to turn and burn and take somebody out.
Are there any other ultimates that kind of perform in a similar way, where if you're struggling to kill somebody with, say, Ferocious Sleep or, some other ultimate, obviously you're not having any luck there, but the moment you like, okay, let me take a breather, slot corrosive, now it's a 1-2 easy done, right? Like,
So I can't really think of any off the top of my head immediately. However, something similar to that is the ult I'm running on my Oakensoul build, which is the Blastbones ult. And I mean, unlike corrosive, it's a very easy skill to counter, in the sense that if you see someone cast it, you just hold block and you'll likely survive. However, it is the only ult on the Necro, I feel personally, where if I cannot kill someone, or can't get through a team's healing in a battleground, if I slot this ult, I will kill people, because
Yeah.
when it works, it works. It's like, 40k plus damage at minimum.
Corrosive does, yes, it is very vicious and powerful, but it does have a weakness too.
Yes,
in
it
the
does, in
fact
the sense
that-
that you can just kind of kite and
Yes.
avoid.
Yeah. And a lot of smart players, when they see you use your vamp form, your corrosive, your colossus, they're just like, you know what? Okay, fine. Use that ulti. I'm just gonna go over here and do something else for a little while.
But to be honest, it's the same thing it's the same problem I personally have with the other two clown forms, and even werewolf to an extent, is that when you transform, you could be on your back leg about to die, and you hit transform and you're alive. Period.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah. And especially when you do that, when you've got two people coming after you, they're not both going to decide to go defensive and kite and go do something else.
Right.
One of them is going to say, "Oh, we've almost got this guy. Let's finish him off," and then he gets one shot because he gets one dot put on him. Flames of Oblivion is going, and all of a sudden you just hit a whip on him, and it's donezo.
Yeah, because
yes.
those, corrosive and the transformative alts, you have to respect them no matter what. Because I remember one time some guy went Goliath and, thinking, he's not going to bother me, whatever. I can still get the res off. And, I paid the price just because I'm sitting in that AoE that comes off his body.
Really hard.
Yep.
So, Candle, actually, this is a question I don't know the answer to, but it's something I've always assumed to be true. When you look at the tooltip for Ravenous Goliath, the tooltip that it shows in damage, that's not the actual tooltip of the damage it shows. You have to be in Goliath form to see the actual tooltip, correct? Since
Right,
it scales on your
because
health.
it scales off of health.
So the tooltip really is like double that. basically. So
Yes.
5k magic damage, doubling my tooltip, I would be at like 5k magic damage every second, which is a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot, and it's a weird, interesting mechanic that Necros are rewarded for by dumping points into their max health, which is something that I also wanted to talk about for this patch because of the Nightblades. People are gonna learn this patch that you're gonna have to start slotting some max HP on your attributes because the gank blades are going to kill you. They're going to get one shots on people, and one of the things about the necromancer that's kind of cool that I like is they're rewarded if you use the Colossus ulti. You get a lot of damage in your Colossus form for slotting max HP.
Absolutely. And they come with a nice little HP buff. They have the most HP
Yeah,
out of any class with that 1250. Oh, well, I guess maybe except for Nightblade if you're really trying, since that's a percentage scaling, I think, still. But it's nice. It's especially nice to, pair it with a class that already gets an HP buff. Because then, you're just rewarded for more and more health. And I totally agree with that. People are going to learn that they need to slot health. And if they don't, they will just die over and over.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So we're
know.
seeing,
Oh,
yeah.
go ahead, Kendall.
Well, we're seeing Nightblades, we're seeing DKs. Um, I don't know how many Necro builds are going around. Plars, Wardens. We're really just seeing the Mag Wardens. What else are we seeing?
Um,
Sorks. Are there Sorks?
yes, there have been some sorks that I've seen.
Like Bosorks,
Um,
right?
Well, yes, bow sorks, and then I also just this he wasn't playing a bow sork. He probably should have been, but he was using the matriarch. And something that occurred to me with the ring is the matriarch isn't as punishing to run when you're running Oakensoul because
Totally.
it's only one ability slot
Yep.
because you don't have to double bar it because you can't bar swap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that a lot, actually. It kind of rewards your sorcerers for slotting your pets. And I like that.
I also did want to briefly mention I don't really think Oakensoul is crazy overpowered. I think when paired with certain setups, it is perhaps a little overtuned. A lot of people are saying the major heroism makes it absolutely OP, which the major heroism is good, but at the same time, I don't think it's quite as, it's definitely not the strongest part. The major force, like, we were saying, is, I think, uh, the absolute strongest part. And
I
if anything
agree.
should be nerfed, maybe that gets tweaked a little bit.
In
Yeah.
PvP, we weren't seeing crit being so dominant in previous patches. Like before this DLC, crit wasn't uh, sure, you can find moments, you can find some crit builds in PvP that are cool and awesome. There was a set, of course, there's this set. What is the crit set? It's got this ramping, building up crit.
Uh, the Zotvans?
There's another one. It's every time you don't get a crit, you get this boost.
Oh, Acuity.
Yeah, mechanical
Yeah,
acuity.
Acuity. Yeah, Acuity, of course, you could make Acuity builds previously in the last DLC, but now this DLC with Oakensoul, like Cameron is saying, that force, that major force is a big deal, and we're seeing a lot of people playing crit builds with Oakensoul, and I agree,
I
that's the
mean,
strongest part.
I used to run crit builds all the time, and
Yeah,
I strongly considered when Saxhleel Champion came out, I strongly considered dropping an entire five piece just to run that set in PvP for the major force on my crit build because of how much
right.
damage it would be. I didn't, but I was very close to doing so. So having it in a one piece, yes, it comes with the downside of not being able to bar swap, yada yada yada. We've had this conversation a million times, but
Mm-hmm.
having that major force, that same buff that I was ready to sacrifice a 5-piece for in a 1-piece is absolutely crazy to me.
The thing that I was just reminded of while you were saying that is you can speak about this because you have an Oakensoul build that you're running, but the lack of a second bar and how many globals you now have for
Yes,
just offensive abilities, offensive abilities,
absolutely.
offensive abilities.
Yes, so I was briefly joking around, kind of joking, kind of serious, because I am going to do it. Uh, I was joking that Oakensoul was stronger in the hands of a really good player because really good players, stuff like buffing up and everything comes second nature to them, but they're
Yeah,
still taking that time to do it all, right?
Hmm.
yeah.
So now you take a really good player who's great at keeping all of their buffs up and all of their debuffs up all the time, and now tell them, okay, now you have twice as much time to do stuff that's offensive. You don't have to do anything like defensively, pretty much. And
Yeah,
that's just amazing. The
because
pressure you can put out.
Hmm.
previously we had to be timing like offensive rotations, offensive combos, kill combos, with your defenses also. Like you had
Right.
to be careful previously, and still if you're running double bar sets, like if you just decide to go all offensive, full offensive, and let your armor buff drop off, let your hots go off, and your defenses just completely drop, you are exposing yourself. You're going for broke, and
You are.
you might have trouble with that. But with these Oakensoul builds, now all of a sudden you don't have to do that, and you have many more openings, many more windows to go for a kill and go for broke.
Yeah.
I like how
So
you kind of like
on
put that all in there.
on that note, when I said, I'm actually going to do it, what I was referring to was I am going to hook up my steering wheel. I have a nice Thrustmaster to play Forza, and I'm going to hook that up and play ESO on my steering wheel. And I'm going to play this Oakensoul Blastbones ult build with a steering wheel because all I really need is to be able to move forward and backwards, break free, and dodge roll. And I only have, what, 6 buttons that I need to press? 7?
That's hilarious.
Do you have a Twitch?
Yes, I do. Twitch.tv/camerabeard the pirate.
Awesome. I'll make sure to
Um,
put a link in the description below for
Do you have a
Kansas.
gas pedal and a brake pedal?
yep, I have a gas pedal and a brake pedal, so I'm going to
So
bind gas to forward and brake to backward, and then steering is turning left and right. I probably don't need any vertical movement because there's very little vertical aiming in this game.
Hmm.
And if I do, I don't know, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, that'll be definitely funny to watch, especially if you're
now,
actually pretty good with it.
yeah, it's gonna be awesome. You got to stream that, of course.
Oh, yeah, of course I will. But yeah, I genuinely think I can at least go positive in a BG like that. Um, it's that. I mean, I don't want to say easy, but it's just that straightforward. Like,
Yeah,
obviously, you still have to be mechanically sound, knowing when to dodge, knowing when to block, knowing when to break free. But just the fact that I can really just go pure offensive, all gas, no brakes, lobbing blast bones at people, weaving heavy attacks and spin to winning, and that's all I'm doing. It's all offense. It really does. It works wonders.
so do you think double bar builds are still viable, and why?
Absolutely. You can't pull off the same kinds of things with Oakensoul builds. Maybe if you were in a group of everyone running Oakensoul builds, then you could do some of those big bombs that you see in Cyrodiil, but you can't do really coordinated group combos with Oakensoul just because you don't have the bar space to set up interesting things like that.
Yeah,
The reason being, you cannot run a front bar set, a back bar set, a mythic, and a monster.
yeah,
Which means you can't run, proc B on your back bar, proc A on your front bar, with a Baylord proc on top and get these huge group wipes, right?
Yep.
You could theoretically, like you definitely probably could on a Nightblade with like Rush of Agony and another crit set, but you wouldn't be getting the Baylord proc, you know?
Right.
Um, like you have to make sacrifices in gear, not just in your skills when you're running Oakensoul. So I do think, double bar builds are still totally viable, and honestly, they're more fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, at least from my perspective, because I've been running a lot of Oakensoul for PvE content and, some running in BGs, from a healer perspective. And I kind of much prefer it from the PvE perspective just because it makes the game a lot more fun with I'll be honest, just the all gen coming in, because it kind of reminds me of back in League of Legends. They introduced this mode called Earth Ultra Rapid Fire, where normally in a normal game you have your Magicka pool, you gotta wait on your cooldowns, things like that, which could be like 2 seconds, 10 seconds, a full minute for your ult and stuff like that. But with this Ultra Fire mode, all your cooldowns are 2 seconds. Your ults, or everything is reduced by 80%. So you have infinite, you have infinite magicka, and you can just spam and go crazy. And it's like there are no rules, and it's a blast to play it. And running Oakensoul kind of reminds me of that, where I can just throw Destro. I think I average in like a 15-minute dungeon, probably like almost 15 Destro ults over
Right, yeah.
every time, and I just throw them out carelessly because I can. And honestly, it feels so much fun. So I like it in that perspective. But from a healing perspective, it's definitely fun. It's definitely fun. But I'll be honest, I think I'm just so crutched on snow treaders that every time I get immobilized, I'm like, God damn it. Like, you just see me holding block and like bashing because I'm like, oh, okay, I gotta hit my race against time,
Snow Treaders is great. It's the best feeling set there is to put on, right? Some sets and skills just feel good, and that one feels the best because all of the annoying things that you have to deal with in PvP are suddenly gone.
Yes.
And it's great. It's wonderful. I love it.
And I think because of that, I'm going to keep using Snow Treaders, and I'm not going to use Oakensoul. I think.
Yeah, go for it. And honestly, I think 2-bar healers are going to remain way better than Oakensoul healers. Yes, you could sit on an Oakensoul healer throwing out resto ults every 2 seconds or whatever it is, but you don't have the utility that a true healer has. And if you're, throwing out resto ults that often on a healer, now you only have a resto staff. And if people start pounding on you, you're not going to be able to block it.
Right.
I don't think 1-bar healers are going to replace 2-bar healers, at least not in PvP. In PvE, maybe. I don't know. I don't really PvE seriously, besides going for some like trifecta runs.
Yeah. And the BGs that I ran with Oakensoul, I think I was just testing out ults where, my front bar is just a bunch of heals and then my ult is a damage thing. So I was just throwing meteors left and right just because I could. And it was great. And I think it's definitely viable, but
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying they're absolutely not viable, but in more like competitive play, or like if you run across, if you're in a good group and you run across another really good group, you're gonna want the healer with more utility.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, if you have like, for whatever reason you're unable to bar swap because you have like a condition or something like that, or maybe you're just lazy in general and don't want to bar swap, you can PvP as a healer much more effectively with Oakensoul.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's for sure. Yeah.
I'm not saying, yes, there is sort of like this U curve, I guess, right? Where
a U curve.
Like people who, either don't care to learn PvP. I'm not like trying to like belittle them or anything. Just saying, people who are into PvE but maybe want to dip their toes into PvP, don't really want to take it very seriously, or people who can't bar swap physically, or people whose, hardware maybe might not be up to snuff, even. Things like that, absolutely. Throw on Oakensoul, you'll have a great time because you're going to have to worry about so much less.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't think it's necessarily, completely OP, like a bunch of people are saying. There are things about it that are really, really, really strong, and there are certain builds that are really, really, really strong. But I think if anything, those builds should be tweaked and not necessarily Oakensoul, if that makes sense.
I
And
had a suspicion before this DLC came out, and let me hear whether or not you guys would say that this is true or not true and irrelevant. I had a slight suspicion, and I think we still have to wait and see because we're still at the very early stages. People haven't completely discovered the most disgusting broken setups.
True,
And
yes. It has only
um,
been a week, and I think you have to really give it like a good month before you really know.
would the general consensus be that Oakensoul is a little bit better for solo or 1vx builds, and that for group builds, you're probably going to be able to achieve much more. If you've got a group of like 3 to 10 players, you're going to be able to achieve much more interesting and probably more powerful setups if you're not using Oakensoul.
So I do think that is true to an extent. I think it heavily depends on the build, obviously. Honestly, I think a group entirely running Oakensoul spec'd into crit would be a force to be reckoned with if
Mhm.
I'm being
Yep.
honest. But I also think there's way more that you can do in a group without Oakensoul. For obvious reasons. You just have way more skills, way more gear setups that you can do, whatever. And same kind of goes for 1vx, right? Like the build that I'm running on this Oakensoul, I would not be able to 1vx on, but I could probably whip up a build on Necro. I know I could whip up a build on Necro that would be able to 1vx with Oakensoul.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to because this was the only build I was interested in playing because I have fun playing with, screwing around with this ult.
What would you
Um,
say your current build is? Like
uh,
1vx group play?
It's primarily just a BG build.
Right.
Pseudo group play. I don't bring a ton to a group, but it is probably best played with a group. Most of my builds are because that's kind of how I just tailor my builds because I'm often playing in a group.
Yeah.
Um, like I have some cross heals, right? And I do a lot of AoE damage, so it
Yeah.
is more of a, at least fighting group build. But again, it's not really a 1vxer, so definitely more of
Right.
a small group, small man.
I think we should try to put together a, obviously not
A
now on
group
the show.
comp with Oakensoul.
Yeah, because that I guess from a healer perspective, nobody needs to run Ola Remake, nobody needs to run Spell Power Cure. It kind of frees us up with some set
True. Yeah.
selection.
There's a lot of things that you could run in a group of entirely Oakensoul builds
Yeah,
that
but
you wouldn't be able to otherwise.
yeah. So
But again, at the same time, it's a trade-off, right? There's a bigger trade-off when you're trading off that many skills.
but you're also getting all those majors, which is pretty good.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And like I said, a crit, I would honestly absolutely want to try out a crit-based Oakensoul build. Or Oakensoul group, I should say.
Yeah, that's a
When
good
I first
project.
farmed Oakensoul, I was playing with Blast, one of our friends that plays with us often, and he was on an Oakensoul build, and I was on my Oakensoul build, and we were shredding in PvP. We were just running around IC and stomping on anyone we came across. That wouldn't have been sustainable, we would have eventually run into a bigger fish, especially on those builds, because we didn't have tons of healing. But what we lacked for in healing, we made up for in the fact that we had insane amounts of damage and unrelenting pressure.
Yeah.
Interesting. And that was Blast, his Frost Warden that he put together.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And so that was also the other thing, right? He was giving me extra crit damage on top of my already insane crit damage because he was giving me minor brittle.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. With that Frost Clench, I think. Right.
Yeah, well, and just being a warden, you have like an extra chance, I think, to proc chilled. So
Yeah, like 200%, something crazy.
yeah, so you're pretty much always gonna have brittled on people.
I think that only comes from your warden abilities, though. So it's specifically from your warden
Okay, yeah, that is
skills.
true.
But either way, you can figure out a way to proc your brittle. You can get your status effect chance up from one way or another. You can just do it.
Right.
You can do it with charge. You can do it with the staff. You can get it. If it's what you want, you can get it. I believe the...
Oh. Before I forget, So I think Camera mentioned like the overpowered or potential for Oakensoul. Do you guys think it's overpowered? Because I don't really think so, to be honest. And
No,
I don't think
I
it
don't
should be
think it's
nerfed.
overpowered. I think it's maybe a little overtuned. But I would, categorize those two things as different. Overtuned is like it's good. It's maybe a little too good, but it's not like it needs a
Mm-hmm.
nerf now. Again, some of the builds I think we're going to be seeing are going to be more indicative of those actual build combinations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they've been a thing for a while. Mag decays with corrosive, hitting you for crazy high whip damage has been a thing for a while. The heavy attack DKs have been a thing for a while. There are some gankers out there that have pulled some serious numbers, like even all the way up until last patch.
Mm-hmm.
But the Oaken Soul, I think, is just kind of highlighting some of those problem points in the past.
I think the ganks this patch in PvP are pushed even to a higher level. Now, is that a problem? Is that bad? I think there's a counter to it. The counter is you just slot some more max HP.
Yeah.
And if they can't gank you and they're built and they're completely dedicating their builds to one-shotting people, usually the case is if they can't one-shot you, you win the fight. That's all there is to it. Anytime you survive against the one-shot gank, if you can heal back up and get yourself back into the fight, they're not going to beat you in a stand-up fight.
So
So you have to slot some max HP. Do I think it's overperforming and too damn good? Uh, Probably not. No, you're just going to have to adapt. And if you're not willing to adapt and fix your build, you're going to suffer from these one shots because
mm-hmm.
it's going to happen. I've seen some Nightblades in open world that are they're one-shotting people and where they were not one-shotting people before, they are consistently regularly one-shotting people now, and it's going to continue until people start slotting max HP. And if you're not willing to do that because you think, oh, my build should be fine the way it is, get ready to be one shot.
So Candle, because I like hearing numbers, and whenever I hear people talk about these things like slotting max HP and stuff, and then my thought always is like how much HP do I need like as a minimum?
Okay, so on one of my builds that I was running the other day, I don't normally look at DPS in combat metrics. Combat metrics, for anybody that's not using it, like you need to download it, start using it. If you like math, if you like looking at your build and making your build better and seeing what damage other people are doing to you, combat metrics is a theory crafter's like favorite thing in the world. It's amazing. It's great. After a battleground, you just open up your combat metrics, see what kind of damage you're doing to other people, see what they're doing to you, analyze what is going on, see how much you're proccing your status effect that you like, see how much your dark convergence is doing. For me, I don't look at DPS frequently, but a lot of people who look at their combat metrics, camera, I don't know if you do.
Oh, I do all the
Um,
time.
yeah, so
It's the only way I
DPS.
can tell how much my Blast Bones is doing because it's not counted on the BG scoreboard.
Okay, so let's see if this makes sense to you. Is this impressive or unimpressive, or does it matter at all? In a 5 second fight, I was fighting a Nightblade. In 5 seconds, the fight was over. Fortunately, this fight I won because I had made adjustments to my build and I slotted to max HP, and then I won every fight. But in one of these 5 seconds fight, his DPS was 15,000. Is
So
that good? Is that bad? Does
that
it
is
mean
so that
anything?
is probably impressive in the sense that okay, so I look at this is one of the things that I look at sometimes in dungeons because I will often just bring in my PvP bomber as a tank because I slot Frost Clench and tank or taunt the bosses and just run through dungeons that way. So I will look at my bomb DPS on like a group
Right,
of mobs or whatever, right? So 15k tells me that the initial DPS of when he was actually dealing damage to you was likely closer to 20 or 25k.
right.
And then he dealt just a little bit of damage to you after that, and then he died.
Yes.
So 15K was probably a lot. It was probably a lot of damage.
Because it started at a astronomically high level when like the Balorg ult dump was coming in over the
Right.
first 1 or 2 seconds, and then it starts to get diminished as they're just doing their spammable after that, hoping to net the kill, secure the kill, and walk away with some Telvar, hopefully.
Right.
And the real danger of that is the first 2 seconds. For most people, the first 2 seconds where that 15K DPS is, like you said, probably closer to 20 to 25K DPS. Um, and that's where the one shot comes in. That's where you get stunned, doing something. You're opening a treasure box, you're walking through a door, you've got your inventory opened up, you're sitting on a flag with your 5 friends, and you think, oh, I'm cool. I'm here with my buddies. They got my back. And then all of a sudden, a ganker comes in. He sees that you've got your inventory opened up, and he's like, yep, there's my target. And you're
Squashed like a bug.
stunned, dead. That
Yes.
is I like it. I think gankers should be a thing.
Yeah,
If
I
gankers
definitely
weren't,
think ganking should be a thing because it is a thing. Like it's like basically saying in a role-playing game, which this is at its core, saying no, you cannot be a rogue or an
right,
assassin of any kind
that's right.
would suck.
Yeah. So there should be pros and cons, and like, yeah, okay, if you need to slot some max HP, okay, your sustain suffers and your max resource, your damage and your healing numbers suffer a little bit, but you can survive the one shot. For me, I have to make that choice. I'm not going to let myself get one shot by
Mm.
any gankers out there because it's so easy to just wait and bide your time on a ganking build, and you're like, nobody knows you're there. You're on your timetable. You're sitting there for an hour waiting for one gank, and you get that one gank and you think, "Oh, yeah, I got you. I beat you." And it's like, "Okay, yeah, but like, were you doing anything?" No, you're just sitting there waiting around, but nobody knows that you're doing that. So like, it's you're not really losing anything. And in Cyrodiil and IC, you can be sitting there and waiting for the perfect opportunity for an hour, 2 hours, whatever, and just get that one gank, and then you pop your invis, you run away, you get out of the fight. And so for me, I'm going to slot as much defense and as much max HP as I need to survive that gank so that I can turn around to turn it into a regular fight and win that fight.
So
Absolutely.
I think, I guess, relative to
So
when,
numbers of HP to answer the question before we kind of got
Yes.
onto this
yeah,
tangent.
yeah.
There is no
So
real number. The number is whatever the number is for you on your build to where you feel like you can survive a gank. Because every build is going to be different. Every build is going to have different armor. Every build is going to have different, damage mitigation in other ways.
you
You
have to look
have
at
to
your
learn and
armor.
play. Yeah.
You have to look at your armor and you have to look at your percentage mitigations. Are you running Vampire Stage 3? If you're not, you probably want to. I don't know that there are many builds that I would run in PvP now at this point, especially this patch. I don't think I'm ever going to play a build that is not Stage 3 Vampire anymore because you're always going to have to run the risk of getting ganked by a Nightblade, and Stage 3 Vamp is always going to protect you against that.
Hmm.
Um, so you got to look at your armor, you got to look at your percentage mitigations, and that's what's going to tell you. Also, are you running a sword and board or a frost staff with a really strong block? If you're not running a strong block, you're going to have some armor, you're going to have some roll dodges, and you're going to have some percentage of mitigation. And you're going to have to look at all of those things and figure out the sweet spot for your build. Each build is going to have different combinations of those things, and you're going to have to find that sweet spot. And you're also just going to have to play it and wait for a good Nightblade to find you, and you're going to have to play with that good Nightblade and figure it out. Like, I actually enjoyed having that good ganking Nightblade come and try to gank me the other day when I was out there in open world, because it lets me test my build and it lets me figure out, okay, what is that sweet spot for this build, and those adjustments that I can make for this build in order to get it right.
So that's funny that you mention it, because I have a buddy that actually killed me once, and then we became friends later that day just by coincidence. And I'll never forget that moment when he ganked me, because he one-shot me. And
Yeah.
I kind of used to, well, I don't know, I was very annoyed, I'll say, because I lost 5k Telvar, right? Because I was running out with Imperial Physique on, and then I get one shot when I had 32k health. I was like, okay, this is some BS. But so we became friends afterward, and it's good to have a good Nightblade, because I, just as you were saying, I changed up my build, changed up my setup, and I said, hey, can you just come like gank me real quick? I'm just gonna be pretending to farm or something, and just I want to see if I can survive whatever. And oddly enough, he took a little bit too long to actually get to me, and somebody else wound up ganking me when I was typing. And the build actually kind of works because it gives me enough of a reprieve to get out of the typing window and just put in my defenses and recover and then get back in the fight, or just run away. So it's good to have Nightblade friends, so you can just kind of artificially test out a build instead of kind of just waiting for whoever.
Nightblades are always the thing that's kind of my gauge on if a build is too tanky or not. And not just Nightblades, but like good Nightblades that I know frequent IC or Cyrodiil or whatever, right? Nightblades that I see a lot, that I know do a lot of damage. If I get killed by them, I'm like, okay, time to pump some more defensives into this build.
Yeah. And it's not like those ganking builds, those one-shot builds are broken. Also, if people do decide to fix their defenses, slot some defense, some max HP, and all of a sudden they can't one-shot people, it's not like their builds are broken either. Now they just have to also adapt. So if I'm a Nightblade, if I'm a ganker, if I'm a one-shotter, how do I adapt? Okay, maybe now I have to attack this person when they're in a bad moment. Or maybe I have to attack this person when they're getting attacked by somebody else. So in a 3v3 situation, I've got two buddies of mine. One is a DK, one is a Plar. They go into a 2v3. The enemy team has 3 players, and they think, okay, we got this. It's 3v2. And they don't know that I'm a Nightblade hanging out and waiting. And I wait till I see a good opportunity, and then on my Nightblade, I jump out and hit and do that one shot on one of the enemy players when they're in a bad moment, and achieve what I was aiming for.
So
does that make sense?
Yes. And I like how you described like the ecosystem of like PvP, and I think I said it on like the first episode that PvP is self-sustainable, because that back and forth of like the prey and the predator, right? Where you get ganked the first time, you learn from your mistakes, you come back, you don't get ganked, he can't kill you. But guess what? Now it's his turn to adjust his build and try to kill you. And maybe he does kill you. Okay, well, now it's your turn again to adjust your build. And it's just that constant back and forth where you never know what you're going to get. Could you imagine in a PvE environment where the AI actually learned? And, the next time you go into Spindle Clutch, it's not the same Spindle Clutch. Like these guys, they're like, all right, listen, we remember you guys from last time. All right, let's run it down.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. That would be fun. And you know what? That's probably one of the main reasons why we're all addicted to PvP, because it's exactly like that. It changes each time, it adapts, and it's interesting, and there's ego involved.
Like you kill Spindle Clutch, like the mobs in there so much where every time you go in there, they just get a little bit more health, and instead of running, whatever weapons they got, now they have damage shields. Maybe they're like there's some sort of like ongoing
and they
story.
Start using combos.
Yeah,
they're using combos on you.
Yeah. Oh man,
put some dots on you, and then they have one of them jump out and do some burst damage.
And there's like new mobs that also show up as well. Like even bosses that would normally just be regular NPCs. It's like, listen, man, that's my cousin that you're messing with. All right, I brought my uncle this time. He's gonna freaking lay it down. You know? Oh man, that would be quite the undertaking. But it would be pretty interesting too if like the whole game just kind of naturally evolved to a point where you can't beat it anymore, and then I didn't know what you do at that point. Then I guess all of the new sets that Zos is introducing, they actually have value because listen, man, these mobs, we're not going to reset the server, but you need these sets to combat these guys because they're learning, and especially when it's not like particularly instant based with like my trek into the delve is unique to everybody else's. No, it's like you have thousands of people every day going in the spindle clutch every time. So every moment is going back to the server and just kind of be doing a +1 for that instance of spindle clutch, right? So you're just kind of feeding the AI this new experience, if you would, and it just kind of pays off in the long run. But
that would be really interesting. Like AI is going to be an interesting part of the future, and like when I don't know, I have no idea where the technology is with applying AI to games and like the PvE element being controlled by AI. That would be really, really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about. I'm sure somebody knows something about that. Camera may know something about that, but
Not too
I
much.
look forward to something like that existing, and yeah, that will be cool. That'll be interesting stuff.
Speaking of the future, are you guys looking forward to Elder Scrolls 6 when it comes out in a couple of years?
I mean, we don't even know really anything about it yet.
I could
Obviously,
tell you,
yes, looking forward to it. I'm also looking forward to Starfield, though, before that. I mean, I'd rather see Starfield have a good launch,
What about you,
at the
Candle?
moment at least.
Oh yeah, yep.
I am too focused on m making massive amounts of Telvar and banking a stupid amount of Telvar to do anything else. That's that's all I'm doing. I'm not really looking at any other games at the moment.
Dude, that's kind of how I feel with ESO, man. Because all these games come out. I think I have the what the hell? There's like this game that came out on Steam. It's like something Zeus or something like that, or I don't even know. But it's like a son of Zeus, and like he keeps dying, but he keeps having to retry the levels over and over again. Something like that. I can't remember the name, but I've got that Gears of War 5, Streets of Rage. I got some other game. I got all those a couple of these games that I really want to play, but freaking ESO is it's I don't want to say it's a job because I really like playing ESO a lot and I love playing it every
Yeah,
day. And I just checked my hours, dude. I think over 2.5 years, I'm coming up on 9,000 hours,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
which is a lot. And like, dude, just like I love the whole concept of Elder Scrolls, like the story, the lore. I love all that, and I just love logging into the game every time. And as you said, I have no interest in playing other games. So when ESO 6 comes out, I don't know what I'm gonna do, to be honest, because I could see myself playing this game for like another decade or two.
I actually can also, even if like the graphics get outdated, I'm more interested in the theory crafting and putting together PvP builds, putting together PvP like compositions with friends, um, and the dated graphics. I mean, I'm not worried about the data graphics. I'm worried about my data computer. Like my computer needs to be upgraded before anything, because then you can
Hmm.
just upgrade your graphics settings. I think the ESO looks totally fine, and if you can play with higher graphics settings, I think it looks great. So I could definitely foresee myself playing this game for a long time. It's just a little bit sad that there's not more of a population. So hopefully, if performance in Cyrodiil and IC will stay up there, and other good fixes can fall into place. I'm surprised that there's not more of a population. And even though I hear people say, "Oh, the performance, the performance, the performance," the only place I've ever actually really seen bad performance is in Cyrodiil in the past. Um, I don't personally ever have bad performance, even if something like break free isn't working. It's usually because people are trying to break free and immobilize. Well, newscast, You can't break free.
Yeah, you can't break and
It
immobilize.
doesn't work.
Mhm.
So a lot
There
of times
is-
that people are complaining, they're just wrong.
I do think there's a very, like, the hard part about having a nice complex system like ESO with a lot of different gear sets and a lot of different whatever, right? Is the fact that you start to alienate people when it comes to people who are either too ignorant or just don't really have the time to put into learning that system. The amount of times I see people saying that DC still doesn't apply CC immunity is absurd when it's just not true. They're
Right.
likely getting pulled by Rush of Agony, right?
Yep. That's right.
Oh, I felt like there was more Cameron was going to say there.
Sorry, did I cut out?
No. I thought you were going to keep going after you said Rush of Agony.
No, yeah, I mean just the fact that, like, you know, people confuse sets all the time. They don't understand, you know, differences between CC immunity and root immunity or snare immunity. It's not, you know, necessarily their fault. It's just kind of a result of having a complex system like this.
Yes.
I think there are things that ZOS could do a little bit better in, you know, PvP tutorial wise. But it's kind of, you know, what's done is done.
So,
do you think that ZOS could do something better in a lead acquisition?
Maybe. Yeah. Are we gonna get into that?
How so? How so?
So I don't think well, okay. Let's actually go back to the beginning. Let's go back to last patch with Death Dealers. Death Dealer's Feat was an impossibly difficult lead to farm. In the sense that, yeah, sure, it's only VDSA, but what people don't or not VDSA, just, you know, Dragonstar. But what people don't realize is even if Dragonstar is easy, it takes forever. There is so much dialogue that is unskippable. The whole thing just is, you know, it's like an hour ordeal.
Yeah, it takes
even if you
time, yeah.
blitz through it, right? That sucks when something is RNG because you can go 50 runs and have the same chance as someone else to get it. You can go 50 runs without getting it and they can get it on the first try.
Yeah.
It's just how RNG works. It sucks,
and you can't do
but
it
it
by
happens.
yourself.
Right, and you cannot do DSA by yourself, and you also can't find a group for DSA because a group finder doesn't exist for arenas for some reason.
Oh, I guess technically you can do DSA by yourself.
Well, yes, you could do DSA by
Normal.
yourself. It just takes a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then fast forward to this patch, I was really hoping they wouldn't continue with anything dumb, but obviously it looks like they have. And I mean, I'll say this as someone who got Oakensoul relatively quickly. First of all, you have to unlock it. To anyone saying that you don't have to, I don't know if you don't have to, but it's certainly a higher chance if you do. You also probably want to do it at an off hour, obviously, if you still don't have it and you're trying to get it. And second, or, you know, lastly, I feel for you. It's tough. It sucked.
And this is also in a game environment that has not a huge population, right?
Correct.
If
Yeah.
we're looking at ESO compared to other like AAA games or games that have high population, I'm pretty sure ESO is not up there. So if we are in a place where it's almost impossible to get the lead with a low population on the servers, then God forbid if this was like any of these other super high population games, we would have a problem.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's already a problem. I genuinely think it was either a scummy move, not a scummy move, but just someone was not. They couldn't like actually put themselves in the shoes of the players for a moment.
Right.
Because anyone who's played this game and dealt with any of the other lead drops, you know, even the ones that aren't necessarily difficult to farm, would know how many people are on the hunt right when the patch drops.
Yeah.
To know how many nodes there are in Murkmire, because it's not like they didn't know how many nodes there were in Murkmire, and still try to pull something like that is pretty crazy to me.
Well, not only nodes,
Yeah.
but a particular node.
Right, exactly. I mean, the kilt was bad enough, right? And there are far more many alchemy nodes, like water alchemy nodes, than or water nodes or whatever it was, than there were lockboxes in Murkmire.
So, I guess I kind of have like a rebuttal to that. Now, I guess from my experience, because I just got my Death Dealers yesterday actually, and I got my first 3 leads. When did Death Dealers come out? Like November of
Yes.
21. So over what 6, 7, so like over a 7-8 month period, I got 3 leads without even thinking about it, putting 0 effort into it. I got 3 leads, right? One of them of course being the DSA one. I just got it without even realizing it. And then I just did my 2 from yesterday. I just ran 1 of the Nirncrux Mind. I had to solo it because nobody else was there, and I did the Blackwood Oblivion portals. I got it on the 5th try, and I just stayed in there, no problem. And
Right.
to me, that experience was very effortless. I didn't even have to think twice. Now,
But it took a while, right?
yeah,
And
it took 8 months without even trying.
not every player wants to wait, right? Like, yes, you didn't really even try. And you would usually agree with you. Like I say, I don't usually farm the mythics right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
I did for Oakensoul because I knew I wanted to play this Blastbones ult build, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I usually don't do that. And regardless of if I don't do that, some players want to do that kind of thing immediately, right? Some players want to have the best gear and, start crafting builds right away at the beginning of a patch. And naturally, like, they have that right?
Yeah.
So when Zos... There's a difference between making something feel like in its achievement and it's difficult to get, and just plain not knowing what would be fun and what would be actually agonizing. And I feel like Zos was really out of touch there. That was the word I was looking for, is just they were out of touch.
Yeah.
So, I guess compared to the other... So it's not that, like, think of it like Black Friday, right? Where everyone's kind of cramming into the door. That's kind of how I was thinking about from what you were saying. But you're just talking about a particular method, regardless of the entry of 30 million people in one thing.
Regardless of, like, it's just along the lines of, like, there's a difference between making something a farm and having something be obviously a good item, because they're not going to put out bad items. They won't sell DLCs that way. They are a company. Putting out something that people are going to want, and in some circumstances people are going to feel that they need, and have it be locked behind something that isn't fun, takes forever, and has no guarantee of if you continue to put your time into this thing, you'll get it, right?
Yeah.
Again, like I said, there's a difference between making something hard to get and making something fun, or difficult, or challenging, rewarding, right?
They're also doing something really bad where they're encouraging their players, because you've got
not play the
so
game,
much,
really.
yeah, and there's so much competition. There's so many players.
Toxicity.
Yep, and they're encouraging people to use like third-party programs, because I'm sure there's people out there that are trying to find programs like auto clickers or macros or whatever, so that they can just set up this system to just stand there and just click, 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 click. And that's a really bad thing to encourage your player base, because whoever is able to set that up is going to win. And so they're encouraging their players to do that. And if you're not doing that, then you just have to sit and wait for the other people to win, get their lead, leave, move on. And you're sitting there waiting. You can't compete at all. You literally can't compete with third-party programs if you're just there casually doing it yourself, in an organic way.
Yeah.
And that's stupid.
I kind of feel bad for the guys on, like, not necessarily console, but people who play or like just religiously with controller, where they can't rebind to their mouse wheel and just kind of scroll the wheel, so you're like getting like 10 clicks in a quarter of a second to try and pick the lead. So, and we already had one iteration of that. What was it? Was it the Thracian lead where you just have to read the note, but there was like 50 people on top of the note?
Oh, I don't know. I don't even have Thracian, to be honest. That got nerfed so quickly, I didn't even bother farming it.
Yeah, there was. It might have been Thracian. It might have been even Snow Treaders or something else. But it was the same concept where there was only one location, And all you had to do to get the lead
Oh,
was
yes, I
read
do
this letter.
remember doing that. Yeah, I do remember doing that for something, but I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, so very similar concept, except this time it was a guaranteed because all you had to do was read the letter and you get it. And now you're just
Right.
competing with that. But I and kind of what you were saying, Camera, I wish they made it so when you open that safe box, you get the lead in the first try. That would
Well,
solve the
so
problem
is
so
it
much more.
is it confirmed that that's not how it works?
Well, so funny enough, somebody posted on the forums, they were like, "Hey, so Zos, can you like actually answer this question? Does it matter if you pick the lock or not?" And they were like, "We're gonna look into that for you and let you know." So they don't even know.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Right.
sure it does matter that you pick the lock because I've only obviously people that I trust, right? Like I've seen things on like Reddit or like in zone chat, but I don't necessarily trust that. From the people I know and talk to in this guild, everyone who's gotten it has picked the lock.
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't know if it's confirmed the first time you get it when you pick the lock. I got it my first time I picked the lock. But I've also not met anyone that's gotten it who hasn't picked the lock. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Yeah.
So I
So
would
we-
venture on the case that you probably do need to pick a lock, and if it's not guaranteed, it's at least like a 50-50,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to pick.
We
which
don't
is
know
still very
anyone.
bad. I mean, yeah, we don't know. The fact that we don't know is bad.
Yeah.
No,
Um,
but we don't know anyone who has confirmed gotten it
Oh, right. Yes.
by not being the first one to pick the
Correct.
lockbox.
Yeah.
I picked the lock
Whereas-
5 times before I got it.
Yeah.
And I've looked at the actual box itself probably like 20 or 30 times and nothing.
Right. So general consensus is they completely dropped the ball here, and
So-
they've encouraged a bad behavior, third-party programs, all sorts of nonsense and stupidity. Yeah, not
Something I
cool.
wanted to get into briefly is like kind of at least my personal opinion of how, these lead things should be handled, especially for the ones that are gear. I am of the opinion that instead of trying to find the new, dumbest, hardest grind that they can, start putting it behind content, puzzles even, right? Like, put it behind a puzzle. Even if eventually someone's just going to look up a solution to the puzzle and do it, how is that any different than, someone looking up where to go sit and, click a button for an hour, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, is that technically a little bit more work? It would be more fun. That'd
It
for
would be a
sure.
little more work, I'm sure, right? But I can't imagine that doing something that's supposed to look hidden anyways, right? Like stuff like the little Easter eggs in the dungeons, right? Where you have to do certain things or interact with certain things that aren't necessarily telegraphed to you.
Maybe something
That would be a fun way to get
associated with
leads.
lore.
Right,
Lore?
exactly. Lore. It's another way that they could fit in lore.
I mean,
Something inside the towns, something
Yes.
associated with the NPCs.
Because
in
the whole
town.
point of the antiquity grinds were supposed to be to go do old content. But as is now, every time you go and do that old content, it's just grinding something for, hours on end.
yeah.
Whereas if they were to lock it behind old content, but also in like lore, right? Like, oh, read this book and do this thing in this dungeon, or go to this town and talk to this NPC and then like solve this puzzle. Like those things would be so much more interesting.
Yes. And man,
And still
I like
difficult.
that.
I mean, they can still make him difficult, hard to solve for the first time. Plus, if they were hard to solve for the first time, it wouldn't be a thing of, oh, everyone, let's try to, figure this out and then share it with the world. Yes, everyone would still share it with the world, but people wouldn't, like personally, I would want to try to figure out something by myself if it was like a
Yeah.
puzzle.
yeah.
Yeah.
Especially because with the mythics, they would be a little bit straightforward on what you need to do to get them, especially when you have to solve a puzzle. And they can make it so like every puzzle had like 5 different iterations. So my experience
Right.
might actually be different from both of you guys. That's a
Yeah.
possibility. But from what you're saying, it's almost like, or at least from my experience when I randomly get mythic leads sometimes, it's kind of like the Endeavor system where, the Endeavor system is actually passive. Like sometimes I complete my endeavors all the time and I'm not even actively trying to do it. They just naturally happen, which is what their intent was, where you just naturally play the game and you get your endeavors done, no problem. The
We don't-
mythics are kind of passive in how you're saying, where just a constant grind again. You don't really have to do much effort other than just do the content. But if they made it more active, where you're solving a puzzle, doing some new lore that they're introducing just for this little thing, yeah, I'm sure it would go a long way.
I think it'd be a lot of
So
fun.
we don't necessarily have to stay on this for very long, but something I miss from older titles, like older games, are
Yeah,
Easter eggs hidden in places, right? Like I'm used to love
totally.
playing games and just hunting for hidden stuff that the developers put in there. And this game, I mean, yes, there are like Easter eggs in the sense that, oh, Maik, references the developers or whatever. Things like that there are, sure, but I want, like things that are a little bit more involved, like the antiquity system that I'm proposing at least, would kind of fit that itch, right?
Hmm. Oh yeah, for sure. No, that would be awesome if they, especially with the build up and how much time they spend to do these things. Like it's been what 6, 7, 8 months since the last introduction of Mythics. That'd be plenty of time to introduce a little bit of lore, some new quest lines and stuff like that, which would just kind of give us all the Mythics straight up. But it'd be fun for those of us that like to read and listen to the
Yeah,
NPCs talk.
absolutely. I love lore, so I would be all for something like that. Something to actually get people engaged with the old content because they always like say that, oh, this antiquity system is intended to, get players back into older zones and do older things, but really you're just going, to whatever place and grinding for an hour.
Yeah, I mean technically they're right because you are going to Murkmire,
Yeah,
but then you're
sure.
leaving as soon as you get
But you're
it.
not
So
engaging with the content.
yeah, very like turn your brain off type of thing. Okay, if you guys don't mind wrapping up a bit, any final thoughts on? I guess we'll go back to Oakensoul.
Well, we're
Um,
like we said before, we're gonna have to still give it some time. I think people still need some time to craft the most disgusting Oaken Soul builds that we're going to see. Um, Pirate was saying that like um, specific builds are performing, and that's what we need to see. We need to see people finding the meta Oaken Soul nastiness that we're gonna find it. We're gonna see it. We need a little bit more time to put it to the test in Cyrodiil, IC, and Battlegrounds, and we're gonna keep watching to see what unfolds.
Camera.
I agree. I like always say, I try to give it about a month worth of time before I like really have a verdict on the patch balance. And I think that with something as, kind of meta shifting as Oakensoul is, not necessarily meta shifting, but something that really is unique like Oakensoul, it's gonna take a while to really know what's OP about it specifically, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know. As I said earlier, I think it's a lot of fun, and I'm kind of afraid that it might get nerfed or maybe a an adjustment where they're removing. I'll be honest. I don't want them to remove the major heroism because I love spamming my ult in a PvE context. So yeah, we'll wait and see. Hopefully they give it some time because I know a lot of these things that seem OP in the beginning, they just need to be flushed out for a couple of weeks and let
Mm.
the community figure out how to counteract it to a point where hey, it's really not that bad, and honestly it's probably not even that good, so we don't even need to touch it, probably even buff it, but let's not get too crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are definitely builds that are going to be very strong and get stronger as the patch goes on, as people kind of find out to min-max them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Um, and those will be annoying, but I don't think that's necessarily all on Oakensoul to blame. Little things may be tweaked about it in the future, but I don't think it needs like a huge nerf right away.
Well said. Okay, so with that, we will wrap up this episode 3, and we'll catch you guys next week or whenever episode 4 is for Healer Theory with Candle, and Shoddy. So look forward to that. And yeah, we'll catch you guys later. See ya.
Out.
Did you want to say bye, camera?
Bye.